meeting to order, the July 12th, 2019 public hearing of the City of Prescott Preservation Commission. Members present at this meeting are Marianne Suttles, James McCarver, Richard Sprain, Michael Mirko, Gary Edelbrock, Michael King, and I'm Robert Burford, the chair of this committee. Staff members present are Kat Moody, the Historic Preservation Specialist. George Worley is in the building. He'll be here.
No, he won't be here. He's out today.
Oh, okay. Scratch George Worley.
Not here.
Michelle Chavez, the recording secretary. Councilman Good from the City Council. Bryn from Director of Planning Department.
And I want to introduce you all to Sharon Myers. She's new on our administrative staff.
And Sharon Myers. This is an open public hearing and is being videotaped and tape recorded by the city. The proceedings are being televised by representatives of the public media, local cable, and/or radio stations, and may also be rebroadcast. The number of commission members present today is 7. It will require 4 votes for a majority. All parties wishing to be heard on an issue are required to raise their hands and be recognized by the chair prior to speaking. Speakers will be expected to state their name and address for the record so that we may know who is speaking and be able to contact them at a later date as necessary. Please turn off your cell phones, electronic devices, and if you haven't already done so, please sign the attendance roster before leaving the meeting. On to our agenda. The first item is the approval of the minutes from the June 7th, 2019 meeting. Have all members had an opportunity to review those? Are there any comments, corrections, changes?
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
I have a second. Those in favor of approval, raise your right hand, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Unanimous.
I have statements that I'll abstain since I wasn't at that meeting.
Thank you, Marianne. Let the record show it. 6 votes in favor, 1 abstention. Carries. Next item of business is HP 19-008. This is at 102 Union Street, Historic Preservation District Number 1, the Courthouse Plaza. And involves a request for a sign, for a new sign for a new business, the Parlor Art Gallery. With that, I'll turn this over to Ms. Moody for her comments.
Point of order. City charter says an abstention is considered an affirmative vote.
Thank you. I was unaware of that. If we could correct that record to 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
No,
Approve.
7 in favor.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
So 7 passes
7-4.
unanimously.
It has been recorded, thanks.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. I wasn't aware of that.
For future reference, even if you aren't at a meeting, technically you can vote on the minutes of the meeting because you do have the meeting available to you via the public media site. So, all right. Good morning, all. As Robert stated, this is a request for a new sign, and this is at 203 Union Street. The address here is right on the corner of Union and Cortez. And I want to go back and give you a little pictorial history of this building before we address the sign request. And so this building's known as the Otis Building. T.W. Otis was an early merchant and postmaster in Prescott. He's one of the first individuals to have telephone service in Prescott, as it turns out. This is the Otis Building on the corner of Cortez and Union Street from 1890. And this picture's been damaged. As you can see, there's some water damage here, but this gives you an idea of what the original facade of the building looked like. It was an all-brick building. It had a fair amount of detailing above the windows here, and you can see there's a parapet wall with a lot of dental work and finials at the top edge of that parapet. And this building has really seen a lot of change through time. At this point, this is when Prescott had wooden sidewalks, and you can see this covered sidewalk all along, each side of the building here. And this was, that was a pretty typical sidewalk storefront for Prescott during that period. This is a shot of it in 1900, and the trees have started to grow up, so you can't quite see it as well, but you can see the top, and you can see the Otis Building there with the date in the top of the parapet. And not too many changes in that 10-year period. And then the next picture I have is from 1920, and this is a parade shot. As often, I end up looking through parade photo galleries at Charlotte Hall Museum because parades show the facades of all the buildings behind the parade. So because we've had such a extensive history of the 4th of July parade, it actually provides really great historic preservation photo documentation of what things used to look like. So this shot here shows, it's the Arizona Journal-Miner at this time that's occupying this building. And you can see by 1920, in 20 years, the facade of the building has completely changed. And the top parapet has been reworked. There's awnings above the upper windows. The window alignment has completely changed. And in as a side note, you can see that the Goldwater store, the M. Goldwater Brothers Mercantile, is here in the back. And I'll point out that same structure again in a later photograph to just briefly profile that as it changed over time.
Is that Union Street we're looking at?
This is Union between this building and this building going up the hill here. So Union's between the Journal-Miner building and the Goldwater's building. And then this is, what's today the Mob Burger and Lifeways books, and then Bill's Pizza would be just off this image here. 20 years later, in 1940, big difference. So in an effort to modernize Prescott, downtown really took some turns in the 1940s and through the 60s. And so this building is a prime example of how things really evolved over time. Stucco facade, clean lines, an expression of modernism, strong horizontal elements like these awnings, including the awning over the back door. And this is the area our sign request is over here on Union Street today. But you can see this is pretty recent after a construction reworking of downtown. You can see there's no landscape elements here compared to today. Quite a stark contrast of cleaning up downtown and modernizing those buildings. In 1955, another parade photo. So you can see the building has generally maintained the clean lines. In this photo, you can see those transom windows above this horizontal awning. And at this point, Sears is occupying this building in 1955. And to point out, the old Goldwater store then has become the Studio Theater here. And the Goldwater store did occupy this building at one point, which is, I'm about to get to that. But then they were established over here on the other side of Union Street. By 1960, we have the addition of what we call the ski jump awnings. due to the sloped awning profile. And those awnings were placed all over downtown, particularly on the properties that the Annette Williams family owned. And so they owned a fair number of buildings along Cortez and Gurley Street, and those awnings were applied on almost all of their buildings. And so this was an effort to modernize and provide, a more current architectural style to the period. And those stayed up, through the 1970s. This is the door and area we're going to be looking at the sign request today. And then all the way till 2004, here's a more recent version of those ski jump awnings in place with a color photograph, so you can see a little more how those appeared. And then in 2004, renovation began to remove the ski jump awnings and improve the building, the stucco condition, and do some other added upgrades to electrical. And this is a picture from 2004 when they were doing the architectural archaeology involved in determining how to remove the ski jump awnings. And this is actually a picture of what the inside of the ski jump awnings look like. So this wood framing, and then it had that metal roofing to form the ski jump portion. And unknown to them, the old Goldwater sign, neon sign, was actually left in place on the front face of the building. And this is not a great close-up of that, and it's a little dark for that facet of the building. But the Goldwater sign, as you know, has been restored. And that was just buried underneath those ski jump awnings. And so that was a big surprise. So when they found that doing this renovation work, they restored that sign, and that's why that's on that building. So the request today is over here on Union Street. And this is a shot of the rendering for the sign. This is a horizontal. Let me see if I can give you a little more light. It's a little hard to see because it's a black sign, but you can see the sign depiction here. It's being mounted here over the horizontal awning. This is a fairly shallow horizontal awning that protects this door here on Union Street. And the sign itself is hung from a bracket with a decorative finial at the end of the bracket. The sign is black with white graphics and indicates the business name, the Parlor Art Gallery. It's a two-sided sign, so it can be seen walking down the sidewalk from either direction. And it'll be mounted using a lag bolt with shields to the stucco above the awning. And we do have the sign contractor here to answer any questions, and with that, I'll turn it over to you all for questions or discussion.
Thank you, Kat. It's always interesting to hear and see some of the history of this town. We appreciate that.
Sure.
I have a question. Are there any restrictions on the length of the sign extending over the sidewalk, city regs?
There are. And this sign is technically extending further from the building than the planning code allows. But because of the horizontal awning, the sign could not be placed without extending beyond the awning. And so George Worley and I, the planning manager, had a pretty lengthy discussion regarding this when I got the application, because this is, from the full stucco face of the building actually further out than we would normally allow. The issue here is that they can't place the sign under the awning because it would be lower than the permitted head height allowed for signage in the downtown business district. And in order to have the sign extend out, the decision was made to count their projection off of the front facade of that small horizontal fixed awning. And so the projection is deemed acceptable.
What are the usual requirements?
The usual requirements, I believe, are 36 inches.
Yeah, it's 5 feet.
Is
Are-
it going in the middle of the
And it could be 48, and I'm not sure because I'm not a planner. That's,
will it be,
but it is over the normal allotted projection.
will it be put in the middle of the doorway?
Brian?
Morning. Yes, it is. It's going to be hung over their.
Can you
front-
state your name and address, please?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Brian Wywick, 691 6th Street. Yeah, it's going to be placed over the front door of the business.
Right in the middle.
Yeah.
I have a question. I noticed the actual graphics are going to be an applied vinyl or some
Yeah,
material, so, and that's on each side
correct.
of the sign. And that'll be a pretty much stark white on this black, so it'll be a
Yes,
real
yeah,
good
yeah. The
contrast.
businesses, colors are very much black and white. And it's just kind of their theme, so we kind of stuck with that.
And I'm looking at this, will this be able to swing in the wind, or is that just a
You know,
rigid connection, or?
we have discussed that with our production folks, and we're leaning towards making it rigid. Just because people tend to, well, kids and whatnot tend to want to see how much they can make things swing. So we're leaning towards rigid, but we really haven't had a firm decision on that.
I would suggest you think long and hard on that. It's mainly because it's a little disconcerting to see a sign swinging, thinking,
Sure.
maybe I'll not walk under it. But
Exactly, yeah.
I don't know that there's any requirement for that, but
Yeah.
are there any other?
I would also think by moving, and because of the length of it, it would have a tendency to get loose and
Sure. Yep.
because
A
of
little
that
more
vibrating.
jiggling, yeah.
Good point.
What's the height of the lower portion of the sign over the sidewalk?
You know, that's a good question. If I don't have an exact measurement, but I'm gonna say it's probably about 9 feet to the bottom of it.
And we have a 7-foot minimum,
Okay.
clearance height for any perpendicular signs, like the ones that are often placed under these horizontal awnings where the awning is large enough to accommodate it. And those tend to be fairly shallow in depth because we do have that 7-foot requirement.
What's the aging of that vinyl? Is there a guaranteed it's going to last 10 years or something before it starts peeling off?
Yeah, it is. It's 3M premium vinyl, which is a good 10 to 15-year product. So yeah, it holds up really well. The paint, it's 1/4-inch aluminum plate. This is painted with a polyurethane automotive paint, so that'll hold up for about the same amount, 10 to 15 years.
Is it in our purview to recommend that they make it a rigid sign?
No, it's not.
Okay.
The discussion will be noted in the minutes, and he can take that as a point of advice, but
Yeah.
it isn't in your
I
purview.
think Brian listens so well.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we were leaning that direction anyways, so if that's what you all think's best, then it works for me.
Give it good consideration.
Sure. Sure.
For the reasons discussed, so.
Uh-huh.
Do you have any other comments on this?
Are there any other signs in the historic district that have been given a variance for length like this one?
Well, it's not necessarily a variance. It's an assessment by planning staff based on this short truncated awning, which prevents them from placing the sign under the awning. So there's There's other signs that are not, that haven't complied to that 36-inch. They generally they're older signs that haven't come through review or had come through prior to that limitation in length. So this is a decision by planning staff that this is acceptable given this unique set of circumstances in this location.
And I would note that the temporary open flag, I assume that's a temporary sign, extends out there a ways itself, and the height of it, I think, is for making that determination, I think is appropriate. If it were below that overhang, then I think then it would have to comply with
It would.
the distance out, but it is kind of a little bit of a catch-22 there.
Yeah. It's a unique circumstance because it doesn't have that full horizontal awning and it doesn't have no horizontal awning. So I think this is probably one of the only locations where we have this little 1 foot projected horizontal awning.
That's a unique storefront downtown.
It is.
And being on the slope of the sidewalk, like the Elks Theater,
Yeah.
there's various things working there. Other comments or questions? Thanks, Brian.
Sure.
As usual, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve.
Thank you, Gary.
I'll second.
We have a second. Those in favor of approving, excuse me a moment, HP 19-008, signage for new business, raise their right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? I believe that's unanimous. Thank you. The next item of business is update of current events. I'll turn this back over to Ms. Moody.
I do not have anything to add. Does anybody else have anything? Okay, I've got people.
I'd like to thank you for all your work you did last month on the breakout sessions and the
Kudos.
conference yesterday.
Kudos.
I thought it went awesome. I enjoyed it and learned a lot of.
Thank you very much.
And the invitation to sponsor us.
Yes, yeah.
your
No,
sponsors.
when it's here local, there's no reason you shouldn't all be attending. So we try to make that happen.
Yeah, I think we all owe gratitude to the city and to Kat for assisting with this conference. It was well put on, well attended, and I think the town benefited greatly from it. I know I did from going to the sessions that I went to. Thank you.
How many attendees do we have?
At the conference, there were just under 400. Yeah, and I mean, there were people staying in hotels all across downtown and eating lunch and dinner in restaurants downtown. So it brought a lot of money into the area.
Marianne?
Mr. Chairman of the Board, this was my first conference, and I was quite surprised at some of the things that were brought up from different areas. It really sort of stunned me a little bit. Everybody was impressed with Prescott. They want it here as much as they possibly can. They'd rather be here than other places. And again, I would like to compliment Bryn and Kat on that for a first timer. I felt pretty comfortable and got a lot of information. Thank you.
Yeah.
And it all goes to Kat. She's been organizing on that committee for a long time now.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's great when we get it here. Unfortunately, we had to wait 7 years between 2012 and 2019. Hopefully, we won't have to wait that long next time around. So
Where is it scheduled to be next year?
they have not announced yet. They're working on it. Normally, they announce at the conference the next year's location, but I think they're having some issues because Dave Ryder was of Veer Consulting, who also puts on, works for the city doing debates. He's an organizer and conference and, planning event manager. He he has decided he can no longer be the support person for this conference. So they're scrambling, I think, to find another event planner to help them with the conference. He felt like the event had just gotten too big and too complex for him to fit it into his other ongoing events, because he's under contract with the state. So he's exceptional at what he does. So it's
They'll figure it out.
yeah, they will. But I think that's part of the reason why they don't have a location yet. I'd expect it in the next month or so. So,
Any other comments or current events? With hearing none, I will adjourn this July meeting. There you go.